Welcome to All Things Policy, a daily podcast by the Takshashila Institution. We are a bunch of policy nerds based in Bengaluru, and we like bringing fresh perspectives to Indian affairs and Indian perspectives to global affairs. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and join us for today's chat.
Okay, namaskara and welcome to the next episode of All Things Policy. Now, you must be thinking, why such high energy? At Takshashila, we have a nice, unique tradition on Thursdays. We do tank scrubs in the morning. I'm not going to disclose much about it, but we follow up with the Thursday thali. So I just had a good lunch and a Mangalorean cuisine lunch, to be more precise. And realized that one of our alum, Vinay Nagaraj, who actually was there with us today, ended up having a lunch conversation which was very impromptu, but which nicely delved into the cyber security space. And Vinay is here with us in the podcast studio. I also have with me Lokendra, my colleague, who works on the high-tech geopolitics segment. And I'm kind of keen on knowing a little more about the cyber side of things because it's very close to heart. So at some point in the corporate career, I had a stint with McAfee software, and a lot of antivirus-related threats and malware is something that I learned through the experience of being in a very cool team that we grew there, and I had like the best times and very close to heart because it was my first workplace. And today we want to kind of take a little segue into it to see how cyber scams, phishing, ransomware, you name it, and it's happening around us. And we want to see how the digital pulse of India is looking at these things. But Vinay also tells us at lunch that there's a new bridge between citizens and law enforcement that he's looking at. It's called COP Connect. And we're going to explore how society, market, and government can team up to keep our data safe. So let's unpack that. Welcome, Vinay, once again. And thanks, Lokendra, for joining in.
Thanks, Sowmya.
Okay.
Thank you, Sowmya.
Okay, now that the thank you has been acknowledged, so let's go with some fundamentals. Okay, for me, thinking about, let's rewind like 20 years, and I would think about something very physical in form for safety of any cyber-related stuff. So it meant no carrying floppy disks outside, no using CD. Later on, no drives would be enabled in your laptops. But now things have moved to a phase where our lives revolve around giving OTPs. In fact, there's a joke running around that half the times people call me for OTPs, so head of OTPs as well. But, how has that kind of transition? And more from a physical, I feel it's become super digitized, right? Like passwords and all of that. So how do you look at these community habits, and how do these allow for cyber risks to be compromised?
Thank you, Sowmya. That's a very good suggestion in terms of the food for thought that in continuation of the Thursday Thalis. Well, Sowmya, as you realize, most of us from the corporate field, and corporates spend millions of dollars trying to safeguard their systems with a lot of technology put in, a lot of processes put in. But they forgot one very key thing, which is the gateway to their particular environments, and that's through the mobile. And post-COVID, we have realized that, because of the bring your own devices culture, or for that matter, employees getting enabled to work from home through their mobile systems, these corporate so-called secure systems, there's a lot of avenues for them to be breached. And in Indian context, there's an added layer of digital India. A lot of our lifestyle have been changed after the COVID as well, more so after the COVID. But this UPI and other things have really changed how we transact with each other, how we conduct our economic business in these particular countries, not only in our personal segmentation, but also into the economy as such. But one particular scope of it which we are left behind is that we have not been trained to use this particular gateway, the mobile systems. Like, for example, you might be going out and purchasing very high branded phone, but you are not aware about the features or the enablement that has happened to you in terms of your access by that particular brand that you have on your phone or in your hands. So until unless you realize what sort of things have been enabled for you by default, you are not safeguarding yourself and you are inviting yourself to a lot of unwanted risk which might have been not there. Suppose you're not using that particular mobile for that matter.
Maybe I can just add
Yes.
slightly to this, right? And this is again stating the basic, but
Yes.
the what has happened with the India story is that before 2016, right? Then this is before Geo rolled out their 4G services. What was the broad composition of Indian internet users, right? Mostly you have a very tiny section that had access to broadband, LAN, Wi-Fi, and so on. And most of the folks were using 2G on very basic phones, right? These are not smartphones. And overnight, you have both 4G and smartphones coming up. So from 2016 onwards to 2020, you have millions of Indians being added overnight, and they're now transacting and interacting on the cyberspace on smartphones, which are very powerful, capable devices, right? And the market did not give ample time for this transition to be a smooth and mature one, right? It happened almost overnight. So you're looking at a scenario where the threat surface available to any malicious actor, and they can be India based, they can be based out of our adversaries or even friendly countries, right? Anywhere, the threat surface available to them out of India, that expanded exponentially, right? That skyrocketed. And when this transition from 2G to 4G happened, and from basic phone to smartphone happened, it was not a gradual and smooth and mature transition, right? And we are paying the cost as a country, heavy cost for that today, right? We may have gotten free data in 2016, 2017. We may have gotten cheap smartphones back then, but today we are paying thousands of crores every year because we are being spammed, we are being frauded, and it can happen to anyone, even if we have on the. And we'll speak about, I think, cyber hygiene going
Yes.
forward, but it can happen to anyone. So I think there's a cost to be paid, and we are paying that cost as a country,
Yeah.
right?
So, Lokendra, basically what's happened is that in the last few years, the Indian national scale population has gone onto the digital highway without having a learning license. So, you are being left to fend for yourself, trying to find out the rules of this digital highway. So, as a matter of fact, not many people, it's their first priority to understand the nuances of this digital highway, and that is the basic reason they're getting frauded. So, until unless you understand the risk factor that comes along with this usage of this particular gateway, it needs to be really cautiously used. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't use this particular platform, because that's not a choice that anyone would not like to have. But once you're accepting that particular choice, you're also accepting the risk along with it. And you need to be careful. You need to have a learning game wherein you are learning every day. You're learning with others' problems. You're learning as a nation state. The government machinery is also going overboard with a lot of educational campaigns and awareness. And of course, Cop Connect, as you mentioned, we are also having our own campaign to spread up this particular awareness in the society, so that as a nation, we are all capable of driving ourselves properly, thoroughly on this digital highway. And I think today's program discussions is going to be more about that cyber awareness, wherein we are going to empower these fellow citizens of ours to be in a better driving positions on this highway. Thank you.
Yeah. So if we had to stretch this a little more, right? So there is a responsibility that's there as a parent, right? First, if you had to look at a vulnerable segment, I would say elderly folks who are fairly new to this game, right? I think we are nicely in between where we adopted technology, but we are also a little more cautious. But who can fall prey to this is mostly elderly folks who will by mistake press somewhere. They wouldn't know that they accepted something, or even children, right? Because they're playing. In fact, our discussion was about how
Very true.
children play games, and we did discuss about Roblox and things like that. It sounds very familiar because we have children in their teenage who are looking at this, and it's very exciting because there's Robux, which is the currency there, right? So, any sort of hygiene aspects, or do you think that just the segmentation, right? The way you teach probably a child cyber awareness to the way you would help another person adopt because they're in the elderly segment, or even us so called active citizens who engage from banking to everything online. Is there a grading in terms of what you could help them with at the start when you're just getting introduced to it, what they need to know, versus when you're in it, sometimes you're blind to it because you're so busy doing what you're doing. So can you take us through that trajectory?
So just to give you an example and slowly make you aware of things. For example, you and me possibly will use WhatsApp or some other Instagram chat or something of that nature to communicate. But you might be so surprised to know that the major communication platform for these kids are say Roblox chat rooms, or for that matter even any online playroom chat rooms.
Yeah.
So this is where they call their friends say after school at 6
And even
o'clock.
Discord these days.
Yeah, Discord, yes,
Yes,
that's because
yes.
that's discreet.
Yeah.
Okay, so like you and me, we are more comfortable with Telegram channels and all, but youngsters, the kids, especially in the high school, 6 to 10 standard, they are more comfortable in the chat rooms of this play video games. So you visit any particular chat rooms of this video games that you have, just in your home, you might be having kids. You'd see that all sorts of conversations happens there, and we as parents, we don't even know that such a platform exists or such a capability exists. Now you won't let your child talk to any stranger on the street. Very similarly, then what's the difference here in the online scenario? So out here, they are exposed to a lot of strangers. They are exposed to a lot of cyberbullying, and most of the threat actors are poaching kids out here. They are vulnerable. Kids are highly vulnerable in such chat rooms. This is the place where a lot of sensitive details are shared, a lot of cyberbullying happens, and this is where it impacts the psychology of kids big way. And you might also see a lot of kids, not only playing those video games, but also getting some sort of a psychologically addicted to it. Not only in terms of the kick that they get in playing it, but also in terms of the communication mediums that work in those chat rooms. So all sorts of crimes. The first gateway we are saying it, especially in the kid scenarios, it's going to be these chat rooms in the video games.
What about old people?
Old people, usually WhatsApp and Facebooks are still there. I recently happened to be in a college awareness campaign, and I just asked people to raise hands who actually use Facebook, and I was surprised not even a single hand went up. Can you believe it? Because current teenagers not using Facebook at all for communication, whereas Facebook is considered as a communication medium for older people, like
Yeah.
your parents and grandparents who are exposed to digital in the last 5 years. They are more talking in terms of Facebook and sharing their daily stories on Facebook.
Yeah.
Whereas the younger generation, it's non-Facebook nowadays.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's a trend. I'm not making any comment on any company or capabilities of them, but I'm talking about the normal trend that we are seeing in the society as such.
So, if you had to look at, say, games, right? I also see a lot of older generation still with, say, a Candy Crush and games that I feel the youngsters don't subscribe to anymore. But they are also on these platforms. So, gaming seems to be a thread along the whole stretch of age spans, right? So,
That's right.
So there also I would see there is some amount of vulnerability because a lot of these windows that pop up are not something that you can easily close. It's sometimes very confusing for the person. They will press all over the place to get to the right, the closure of it. So I feel some things are not very intuitive.
Very true.
And for some people, it just takes time to be aware of these things. And by then, they're probably caught in some sort of a trouble, like we were discussing,
Very
right?
true.
Many scenarios. And we learn through that, like you said. So let's take an use case where some digital thing happened like this as a crime. Then what should be the first response for anybody to kind of go by it?
See, Soumya, what usually happens in the older generation of people who are using this such platforms for the first time, or who are new to that, usually they become victims of clickbait. So as you mentioned, like they are trying to use any particular platform, like a game or for that matter, a lot of pop-ups come in, a lot of URL comes in, and by unintentionally they click on something, and then they become victims of some cyber crime, or there's an always a recursive action that follows after it. So the best way is that you go in for browsers which are more safe. For example, the Brave browser is there, which is much more safer than your normal traditional browsers. That way, at least some of the actions, the best practices, it will be focused more about ensuring that such pop-ups do not come, or you're in a better positioned way by which such victimization doesn't happen. That is one. Second is that suppose you are actually compromised, you become a victim, and it usually happens when you are using your mobile phones rather than on the desktop browsers, because in mobiles there's a lot of other secondary features or secondary vulnerabilities which come into the picture. Say for example, your location or access to your contact list, of that matter access to your picture libraries and folders, sensitive data, what you can call as, which is sensitive for you, but it's a publicly available stuff for the bad actors. So such a thing happens, then it all depends upon what sort of a victim are you. Like if you are a very high target victim for the bad actors, hackers, then the storyline would be altogether different. It all depends. For example, let us take a case of a very high-powered businessman whose mobile phone is compromised. Now, when such a thing happens, right from his professional life to his personal life is in jeopardy. Everything that he interacts on his mobile phone, it could be some sort of a tendering document that he would be providing, some sort of a sensitive information, or HR professional, whatever is it. Through their particular mobile as a gateway, we can compromise not only that particular person's personal life but also the professional life. So they are actually acting as a gateway not only for themselves but also for their companies. So depending upon the nature of that particular victims, the entire security apparatus will take a different view about where all the lateral movement could have happened of that particular bad actors. This is exactly what ransomware is all about. You use the weakest person in the link, you compromise the system, get into the system, and then you laterally move around to find what are the crown jewels of that particular system, and then you compromise them, and then the blackmail story starts. You pay me or else, ransomware, the Bitcoin stuff and all. So usually, like it all boils down to how you use your mobile phones in a best practice manner. So of course, like you have the usual stuffs like use a proper antivirus and all those things. But other than that, what's really matters is, whether you're accustomed to using it as a good user in terms of not clicking all unknown stuffs out there. Because even in a very beautifully looking stuff, it could be embedded URLs and all, which can actually, leak out your data to the bad actors. So the more aware you are, the better in this particular digital highway.
Okay.
Can you tell us more about the Cop Connect platform? I'm pivoting the conversation slightly here.
Yeah.
From the problem space to the solution space
Absolutely.
also.
Yeah.
So can you tell us more about this platform, what you're trying to achieve here, and why is it better positioned than our existing platforms for grievance redressal?
Absolutely. Thank you, Loken. See, basically, this Cop Connect platform started because, when we saw that there's a lot of cyber victims who are facing challenges with our law enforcement agencies in terms of the skilling issue, or for that matter, in terms of the capability, in terms of numbers. You will not have a lot of police stations in India. Like, to just give you some theoretical numbers, we have got almost 17,500 plus police stations. If you talk about just hardcore policing, almost 14,500 police stations. But only less than 400 of them are equipped to handle SEN, that is the cyber economics and narcotics. And there too you see that cyber is pulled along economics and narcotics, so you call it as a SEN police station, because cyber happens to be the gateway for economics and narcotics as well.
Yeah.
That is the basic police ideology of putting it as a SEN police station. So you see the numbers, 400 police stations for SEN and 14.5 to 17,500 depending upon the policing requirements. Okay, so specialized units are also clubbed in there. So getting to the numbers, this is in terms of the policing infrastructure. Now you can imagine like Bangalore sort of a city having just 9 SEN police stations, that too off late. That has happened in the last 2 years. Earlier it was just Whitefield SEN police station, only one in Bangalore. So even if you go out into the districts of Karnataka, we have got almost 30 districts. So even a place like Mangalore will have one, Madikeri will have one, or Gadag will have one. So imagine such a big district population having one cyber police station, and that too you're not sure whether they are properly staffed, properly equipped and skilled. Now you take it to the entire nation-sized country like ours, and you would see a huge challenge in terms of policing the SEN requirements, right? So one thing is very clear, that is not going to happen through the so-called official channels. We citizens will have to pull up our socks, come out with some alternate mechanisms. And here is exactly where ISAC Foundation has come up with a nation-building capacity, nation-building platform called as Cop Connect. And I'm very happy to note that this particular platform has got more than 25,000 cyber volunteers right now, and we want to take it to, of course, the 1 million as soon as possible using various facilities through empanelments from CSR-funded bodies as well as institutions like Takshashila. So the idea is, like whenever you become a cyber victim, whether you are an educated person or a person from the rural background, or even if you are a bureaucrat or a politician for that matter, the first thing that you lose out is logic. So you fail to think logically, you don't know your next step of actions, you don't know what exactly to do, whom to contact, or where exactly to approach. Of course, you know that you need to go to a police station, but going to a police station is a psychological barrier in India, most of the time because of cultural ethos. Here is exactly where the cyber volunteers come into the picture. Absolutely free of cost, you can approach this particular cyber volunteers through an app called as Cop Connect. So it's applicable both for the Android Play Store as well as the iPhone economy. So you can download this particular app. Like an Uber nearest driver available to you, you'll be able to see the nearest volunteer. And then you'll get the details of that particular volunteers, and you can book an appointment with them and discuss your particular case. And there's an also option wherein you can physically visit a cyber wellness center. A Cop Connect cave, we have also enabled that to become a cyber wellness center. I'll come why exactly that. So you can actually book an appointment slot, visit cyber wellness centers. There are two in Bangalore city, one in AMC College, one in DSATM College, two in Chandigarh. One is in Punjab University, other is one NITTR facility. So two is there in Chandigarh. One is in Delhi Palam Cant. So 5 facilities physically are available. We are trying to increase the reach of these physical centers as well. But more on the app part, any particular cyber victim can contact the nearest cyber volunteer across India using this particular app. The volunteer will be absolutely free of cost, helping you first of all, gain some sort of a strength, think logically. He will be able to pat you down, and then during those golden moments, they are very critical. They will help you collect the technical information like your transaction numbers, which account to which account the money was transferred. So all those details can be collected. And why so? Because this particular transactional information is very much important to file the FIR. There's a huge challenge in India to go and file the FIR itself. So they will help you get to the concerned police stations, get to the concerned law enforcement agencies, file you that FIR first of all. Of course, there are facilities like 1930 helpline and cybercrime.gov.in. They're doing a fantastic job. These are all handled by the I4C Center from the Home Ministry. But still, that digital barrier is there in India, where you always want someone to help you assist during those particular golden hours.
Yeah.
And this is exactly where the volunteer pitches in. And once only you go ahead and get that FIR done, they will also help you follow up that particular case. And if required, there is also an element of cyber lawyer, cyber psychologist, and forensic experts also available to you free of cost, so that your particular case can be taken to its logical conclusions. That, I think, is the biggest missing component which is not there in the official machinery, and we are filling that gap. We are not trying to replace or compete with the official machinery, but we are there as some sort of an intervention officers, cyber crime intervention officers, to help bridge that particular gap with the law enforcement agencies. So we are there to help the law enforcement agencies. Okay.
Sowmya, if we look at this effort in terms of the Samaj Sarkar Bazaar framework, right? Then this is Samaj essentially teaming
Stepping
up with Bazaar to some extent, right? With
Absolutely.
CSR funds.
Absolutely.
And also, I'm thinking these volunteers are also having daytime jobs
Absolutely.
in corporate sector and other places, right? So it's like Samaj coming up with Bazaar teaming up to do something that Sarkar is trying to do, but the capacity is very limited, right?
But aren't there cybercrime cells that were meant to be doing something similar, Vinay?
This is exactly the point, Soumya. All these 10 police stations, what I mentioned, they are nothing but your cybercrime cells for the Karnataka police, or for that matter, they're the police department of that particular state. And as Lokendra was pointing out, these 25,000 volunteers who are talked about, I'm very happy to state that most of them are ladies, housewives.
Okay.
Professionals, working professionals, and there are also an element of national cybersecurity scholars, 300 of them, joining this particular force, giving them a technical angle as well, where it's required across the country.
Okay.
So you have elements of the working professionals who are there from the corporate world also joining in, traffic wardens, home guards, NSS people, NCC people, people from the student world, anyone who is above 18 years who can sign legally. Those people are eligible to become volunteers, and this is how we train them through a 30-hour course, and then we take them through enablement sessions where we help them get in touch with IPS officers, senior seasoned IPS officers who have seen the thick and thin of the cases on a day-to-day basis. So they actually know the legal component involved, the psychology component that's involved, the forensic experts also that's involved. So they are attuned to the requirements of not only the victim but also to the requirements of the law enforcement agencies. And this is exactly where the Samaj itself has matured in a way to find out some nitty-gritty solutions so that this bridging of the gap can be done.
Yeah. So I'm more keen on, say, this is more of course correction, right? Something happens and there is a response to it. But are there tech innovations that are happening which allow for, say, affordable cyber safety tools, something that's well integrated, something that takes care of it by default, rather than there is potential for something to happen then, right? Currently,
Yes,
the system is not enabled to an extent where the tech is ensuring proactively something is done. So, do you see that in any way helping us solve this better?
Can I just maybe before he jumps in, maybe just put in a quick response, right? For every tech development, there's a counter tech development by malicious actor, right? Because they're also keeping track. They're and also some of these problems may look like tech problems, but they're actually people problem. As Vinay also said, right? The person you're compromising is the person, right? It's tech is an tool you're using to get to the person, but it's a people problem. So no matter how fancy tech you deploy in your phones, in your laptops, in any cyber facing cyber front system, it won't solve for it completely. You'll still have those cases.
That's right, Lokendra and Sowmya. Both of you are partly right, and I think the whole truth will come out only when you amalgamate both of it. And how I would like to say is, like for example, when you say a hacker is trying to compromise someone, as I always say, he's not actually trying to hack the system. He's actually trying to hack you. That is the social engineering part that we talk about. So there can be technical abilities to help you minimize that particular risk or transfer that particular risk. Now, two very fine examples in the Indian ecosystem is that both of them are developed by my friends. So there could be an intent of, I would like to code it up. There might be conflicting interest. But one particular fantastic app that is there is called something called as Mobi Armor. That is from the house of Mr. Amit Dubey, one of the very fine cybercrime experts in India. So this particular app will also help you, minimize that particular risk. Another one which has recently come out is Cybex. You might have seen full-fledged newspaper ads. This is from a company called as 63 Sats, which is a very seasoned cybersecurity organizations. Both the owners are my close friends, so there's a conflict of interest when I say that. But as an user, I got both of them in my systems, and there are different levels of ease of operations in that particular ability. They're all subscription models are there. But the best component is that as this particular ecosystem matures, there's an element of cyber insurance also coming in. Say, for example, like a seasoned professional like you, if I say that anything that you click and there's a damage and you're covered, say, till 10 lakh rupees, and you need to subscribe it with, say, XYZ amount of monthly amount. Now, you would be more convinced to, go through with your actions in the digital world with a more confidence, because there's a cyber insurance component helping you out mitigate that particular risk. So these are the nuances that has come up in the cyber ecosystem as well to help you navigate this digital highway.
But I would still say, are there incentive mechanisms for a tech company to say, I know that being, I was telling you about the days at McAfee, right? As much as we think we are smart, the hacker is one up above you, right? So they're already thinking way ahead of you. So not just enough filters of putting something through the virus ecosystem to say, okay, is this strong enough to put it out there? But is there no way that we can think of a future which is so foolproof that it should be able to kind of create alarm systems, create some sort of a signaling that this is getting to the red zone? Like say when you cross a signal, you know that if an accident happens because you jumped the signal, you at least are aware that you can't even fight that battle because you were at fault anyways. But at least it gives you that signaling that, hey, stop, right? I mean, or slow down. So right now, when things pop up, or where usually this vulnerability lies, is somebody is trying to elude you into it.
Yeah.
Right. So to gamify that, is there any way that one can think about a tech solution? I'm just
So I'll just say two things to what you said. First is a clarification, right? See, malicious actors are not necessarily smart. They are smart. Some of them are really sophisticated, very smart. They have a lot of resources. But it's also a numbers game, right? If a malicious actor is putting 1,000 tries and succeeds in one or two, and makes a lot of money out of it, those one or two cases will make headlines, right?
Yeah.
But they might have tried for 1,000 other people, right? So it's also a matter of how many tries you're doing, what is the scale.
Right.
And second, but before I move to that, I'll take your voice. Do you agree with the scale part?
That's right, Lokendra. In fact, I just wanted to add on to that, because that would give a more holistic picture about what Sowmya was interested in. That's right, Sowmya, both at the institutional level as well as corporate level, government level, there's a lot of activities that's been done in the very recent past. If you take the case of Airtel, for that matter, as a company, as a telecom player, they have come up with a lot of AI-related networking to ensure that spam calls are filtered out. There's a very big underlying AI architecture that have come around with by making sure that at least the Airtel customers, Airtel calls which are landing from Airtel network to Airtel network is spam proof.
Yeah.
Of course, it's an upcoming one, and there's a lot of fine tuning that needs to be done. But that has given a reasonably good amount of
the spam warning that you see. Okay.
Not only that, even the Department of Telecom has come up with Sanchar Sati portal. They have blocked almost 1 CR plus SIM cards. They have been blocked. Multiple SIM cards have been been blocked, and so many anti-spam technologies have been brought in at the national level, so that the Department of Telecom also is playing a very big role in terms of the AI architecting of the entire telecom industry as such. So those are the two institutional level stuff that's happening in the country. Other than that, you see a lot of players like the Mobi Arbor and the 63 Sats, as I told you, which are making you tech enabled in terms of how you use your phone. Like for example, usually it so happens that you go and scan any QR code that could be a malicious QR code, or you try to click on any URL that could be a clickbait, and you are taken to a malicious place. So at least these basic ones, like the wrong QR code or a wrong URL, that can be minimized using tech. So next time you try to click on that URL, some pop-up or some sort of features coming up which says, look Sowmya, this is something wrong, please don't go it, or you take that risk. That would be a good way of doing things, or even for that matter the QR codes. But most important of all, it's all comes down to cyber awareness. We have seen in our cyber awareness campaigns as well, once we are convincing people not to click on random links, anything that comes down to you, do not think that you are a beneficiary and go and click it. Please avoid it. The traffic rule that we talk about, always wait for 10 seconds, look right, look left, and then cross the road. Very similarly, if there's some juicy stuff coming across to you, take 2 seconds of pause. Just think, why is this being sent to me? That's enough for you to get that sixth sense activated to know whether you're actually going to be a victim or not.
Right.
So I'll just add to the second part and what you also said, right? So the second part of your question was foolproof, right? So one thing, as you also pointed out, the spam calls, right? A lot of companies, what they're doing is predictive threat mapping.
Absolutely.
Right? So they're scanning the entire cyberspace or a portion of it, in which they're interested. So if it is a national governmental body, they'll be looking at India's whole cyberspace, right? They'll have a broad view. If it's a cybersecurity company, they may be looking at healthcare, telecom, and so on. What they're doing is they're looking for signatures, threat signatures as they emerge. They're predictively mapping it, and AI, I think, is playing a big role in this. But at the same time, even the threat actors, the malicious actors, they are also learning ways to evade these systems. So it's always going to be a thief and police game, right? And I think building a foolproof system, whether it is at the individual level, whether it's at a company level, or whether it is at a nation state level, I think that remains a distant dream and would continue to be so. The more possible thing that we can aim for is resilience, right? Because again, as I said, a hacker has to get correct only one time, has only get to through one time, and you have to succeed 100% of the time. So the odds are stacked against you. So the thing cannot be foolproof at any level, individual, company, or nation state. But can you build systems that can spring back into action very quickly in the aftermath of a cyber attack or a cyber fraud? So if it's an individual, let's say you have gone through something, let's say very sophisticated cyber fraud has happened with you. Are there systems around you which will help you recoup, which will help you lodge an FIR, which will ensure that law enforcement is able to block the accounts in question, get your money back? And we have something called COP Connect, right? So these are the systems example. If it's a company, whether they have segmented their networks enough that even if one portion is compromised, other keeps functioning, and the company's operations are not fully down. So if it's a ransomware attack, for instance, it's not as if all their operations have to shut down. If it's a nation state, then can a nation state ensure that its critical infrastructure continues to be functional even when it is reeling from a cyber attack, right? So you can aim for resilience, you can aim for springing back quickly to action, but you can't build 100% absolutely safe systems.
But it's interesting, you mentioned at lunch, Vinay, that the UPI transaction, if by chance you've done it within 6 hours time,
4 hours.
4 hours, is it? It can be, you need to kind of initiate an action, and with that, something gets activated. How does that process look like?
That's right, Sowmya. Like off late, the UPI transactions were coming into question because there are a lot of high value transactions that people were doing and losing a lot of amount. Say for example, a share market transactions, you can do it right till 5 lakh rupees through your demat accounts. So the government took notice of it, of course, through the intel that has been generated from organizations like Cop Connect. Because whenever there's an cyber victim who comes to us, we also develop intel based upon that.
Correct.
And we we'll be able to tell how many threat actors are operating in a given particular geography, or for that matter, how many people became victims in, say, small South Bangalore or Bangalore or Karnataka, whatever. So that automatically that intel also gets generated. So based upon these intels, the Home Ministry's I4C does come into picture, take actions. And in the case of UPI, they have developed a protocols and SOPs now, wherein any particular high value transactions, so if it's reported to the organization by 1930 helpline or your cybercrime.go.in, if you report it there, they can actually go ahead and reverse that particular transactions. So how this 1930 operates is that, you can say it's a room full of bank related representatives, say a room full of people from the SBI, the Kotak Mahindra Bank, or XYZ banks, a lot of NBFC players, a lot of payment aggregators and all. So let us suppose, you lose money from an SBI account where the amount has been debited from your SBI account and gone to, say, Axis Bank account. So once you report it there, so the immediate bank representatives will come into the picture, and then they will reverse the transaction from the Axis Bank back to the SBI bank, because they have got the transactions proof that you are done in a given format that is required for them to take actionable intelligence. Right? So if you don't provide that, then you're in soup. Because the legalities would be there to reverse a transaction between 4 hours, but your responsibility as a cyber victim is to help them get that proof. This is exactly where our volunteers from Cop Connect will come into pitch, because they know the SOPs, they know how the system operates, and they will help the victim, in that golden hour, I repeat, golden hour, get hold of that proof and give it to the 1930 agencies so that they can take actionable intelligence. They can take actions based upon that intelligence. So that actionable intelligence is not there. Even if the legality is there to reverse a transaction, you will not be a beneficiary.
Sowmya, before we move to conclusion of the podcast, I wanted to ask Vinay a very fundamental question, and it's a forward-looking question, right? And this is something I talked to him over the lunch also. What is the biggest worry, right? So you observe all the trends in the cybercrime landscape, and when I asked you, you said AI and impersonation. So can you please, for the benefit of our listeners, and I was myself also very surprised by the 30-second rule you told me. So can you please tell us what that worry is?
Yes, this is part of the best cyber practices that we want people to follow, especially when we go for any awareness campaigns and all. Looking into the technological advancement that has happened in this particular field, and looking into the way the crooks operate, the bad actors operate, there are some best practices where you can actually use that to become smarter. For example, like in our interactions, what we have found out is that the current AI models which are built up, none of them actually work very successfully at a nation scale level in vernacular languages. So how you can beat the system is, if someone is say good morning to you, possibly you can say namaskaram. So anyone will not be able to pick up that voice sample and develop into something else. So, and the minimum requirement is almost like 30 seconds to 40 seconds. So if anyone is continuing on with a bad call for 30-40 seconds, so there is a probability of someone taking out your voice sample for 30-40 seconds and then developing it up. So suppose you require, you happen to receive a spam call, or a based upon your sixth sense, you come to know of the fact that someone unintended person is calling. Do not answer in English language, number one. Number two, do not talk more than 30 seconds. These particular basic golden rules will help you from a lot of things. That is rule number two. In fact, the rule number one is, what I would say is, if you receive any calls, just to avoid the AI reach of things, do not receive the calls. Even it happens from your dad, mom, or immediate family members, boss, do not receive the call. Always cut the call and call them back. So this way, all the automated AI systems that are there, they actually work in one-way traffic. So such systems can be developed in the future. I'm not negating it, or it might have already come last night. I don't know. So because the people are always one step ahead of us. But as of now, as we speak, there are no systems which can actually receive a call. In fact, most of the banks also, you might have seen, wherein, especially the spam calls, they will give you a call back. And only when you reply and say hello, they will try to connect it to an agent. This is the latest that's happening in the IVR technologies, especially for marketing related calls. Because you are giving a consent by saying hello. That yes, I'm interested in your spam call, and then it gets connected to an agent, and then the agent will start speaking. So even from a Privacy Act perspective, you are actually consenting to speak, not the other way around, and you cannot harm a machine for that. So these are also basic principles by which you can be absolutely sure, for that matter, for the instantaneous matter, that you are avoiding such spams, and you're not getting into the arena of the bad actors.
In fact, my own experience of interacting with a wide network of people. So I encourage most people to email me and I will respond. And only when I save their numbers and then I know they have given me a call and I missed it, I would call back. But unknown numbers, I don't, because I'm like, if it's urgent, if it's official, they will mail me. Otherwise, they can always text me and say, I'm so and so. And then I know who this person is. So one is that. But to close the conversation, if there's a biggest gap that we assume is there in the system, is it in the education side of it, or is it in the enforcement part of it, or the tech standards itself? Where do you see the huge gap as of now?
So we are still growing up as an economy. We are still learning from our misdeeds. So there is gaps, huge ones available in all three of them, and possibly more which we are yet to discover. I'll give a simple example. For example, most of the banks tell us that if you lose money, come and report it to us within 3 days, and we'll take action. In fact, there are RBI guidelines also which tell you within 3 working days, if you report it to a bank, 100% of the money will come back to you. But tell me, how many banks have an SOP which will tell you that they acknowledge you within the 3 working days? You shoot them an email, they will acknowledge you in 7 working days. So half the battle is won for the banks. They need not pay you the money back. Policy problems, right? Tech enforcement, you try to reach out and file an FIR on 1930. Minimum wait time might be 15 minutes to 30 minutes. On top of it, law and order is a state subject. Why would a person sitting in Delhi dictate terms to the local police administration? So there are jurisdictional challenges. There are challenges of legal issues. There are challenges of tech transfer. There are also opportunities wherein, like Bangalore has got almost 80 to 90 call center agents trying to take the 1930 call. But on a busy day in Bangalore, it might be more than a wait time of even 40-45 minutes.
And that also says so much about the scale of these things, right? It's
Absolutely.
so scary that it's 15-minute wait time.
And I'm sorry to say this, Bangalore is termed as the Silicon Valley, but when it comes to tech, it is becoming a Corn Valley as well. It's becoming the headquarters of the corn ecosystem. So as Bangaloreans, we are really concerned that this transition should not happen. It should be checked immediately, and all proper necessary actions should be taken in any domain to ensure that, the brand image of Bangalore is maintained.
Yeah, because even updates and all that come, right? Sometimes people have told me they use updates and actually it slows down their system and stuff like that. But I'm like, updates are meant to kind of protect you further, right? Because updates will be improving the system in many ways. So I see a lot of people not being able to, process that well. So I know we have a long journey there. But from the extension of lunch conversation to a podcast, thanks, Vinay and Lokendra. I think this wraps up our today's bite-sized dive into our cyber awareness. And let's all remember that Samaj Sarkar Bazaar approach is not just for theory and a framework, right? It's a team sport that we all should play together. But let's update our devices, question that suspicious link, and keep the conversations alive. And thanks for tuning into All Things Policy. And until next time, stay curious.
Thank you, Sowmya. Thank you very much.
Sowmya.
And I think I'll be able to share you the links of the Cop Connect as well. If you want, you can put them in the links below in the podcast so that, anyone interested, they can download the app and be a beneficiary.
Yes.
Thank you, Vinay.
Thank you. Thank you.
If you liked our show, dive into Takshashila's research on technology, strategy, and economic affairs. Check us out at our Twitter handle @Takshashila INST or our website takshashila.org.in.